I absolutely love when I have the opportunity to meet amazing entrepreneurs that have done great things, that have taken their vision and built it. And then someone else comes in and says, I love what you've done. I want to acquire it. Our guest today, Natalie Micale, is someone that I first learned about through a good friend of mine, Maggie Thorne. She was highlighting a session that she attended that Natalie was talking about building your brand and was so positive about this message that Natalie delivered that it caught my attention. Even though I wasn't at that event, she sounded like somebody I wanted to know. So when I reached out to Maggie and I said, would you make an introduction? She said, she's your kind of people. Absolutely. Made the connection. She and I became acquainted via email. And I'm so grateful that she agreed to be on the Ripple Effect podcast. She is a dynamic entrepreneur. I can't wait to dig into how she created her agency. She went from being a news anchor and, focused on the news business and then decided to take that and do it in a completely different capacity for the clients that she ended up working with. And I just find that fascinating. Take what your core skill set is and then up level it and then do it for yourself. Make more money, build a business, eventually get acquired, and I'm curious to see what's next. So, with no further ado, let's dive into this interview with Natalie Micale. All right, guys, I am super excited to have Natalie join us today for the Ripple Effect podcast. Natalie, how are you doing?
Doing wonderful. I was just working on an AI project before this and trying to figure out how to leverage the next generation of technology.
How's that working for you?
I mean, I think that if people aren't learning AI at this point, you're going to be just swept behind in terms of people just outperforming you in the workplace. You got to know how to use it. You got to be learning it every day. It's a practice.
I agree. Do you happen to know Kevin Rose by chance? Is that a name you're familiar with?
No, I don't. Who's that?
Well, he had a he's a tech investor, pretty well known in different tech circles. But he actually had a program for a long time called Dig Nation, and they're bringing it back. Like he sold it, that company didn't do anything with it, so he bought it back, and they basically highlight all of the trends that go on. And he's leveraged that success into a really I think a pretty famous podcast that he has now called the Kevin Rose Show, and he just had Reid Hoffman, which is the founder of LinkedIn, on as his guest. And so they were talking about this in and around South by Southwest and on this episode, but then he covered it in some stuff he did with South by. And he was talking about Reid Hoffman's suggestion was that if you had kids or you yourself want to become relevant in the next 5 years, that you should be plugged into every possible podcast training, YouTube video on AI that you can possibly get, because if you don't, much like what you just said, you are going to be left behind. The train's leaving the station and you better catch up.
And it's way different than the internet. The
Yeah.
internet was a much slower burn,
Yeah.
but now it's looking at hiring at our firm. We're asking the question, what are you using AI for? How do you use it every day? How are you leveraging it? I don't really have any interest in hiring anyone on our team who
Yeah.
doesn't know how to use AI on a pretty proficient level at this point and is interested in expanding their expertise.
What
So
is your, yeah, I mean, we're just geeking out right off the bat, which I
let's
love. This is
go.
fantastic. What are your favorite tools to use in AI?
Yeah, so I love ChatGPT. I love Perplexity for playing around with some simple ways to design stuff. I love Gemini. I think Gemini can be really helpful when you're building out complex spreadsheets. I'm not somebody who ever listened in school to all the formulas. So it is, I'm sorry, I know that people went to school for that. So it is so helpful when I'm building out something with financial models to be able to just go right into Gemini and have it plug in the equations for me so that that spreadsheet looks great. I'm
Yeah.
using it also strategically to synthesize information quickly. Maybe there's a webinar that I really wanted to attend and they send me the recording. Well, honestly, I can take that transcript, put it in a chat and ask me, what do I really need to learn from this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is really a big piece of this is it's synthesizing and breaking down information so I can eliminate the fluff. And then it can analyze complex problems. So you can have it build a pro forma. You can have it build your entire sales deck. If you have 3 calls with a client and it knows its goals, it can build that entire sales deck for you in less than 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So those are kind of some of the most use cases. And then this morning, what I was working on is my best friend said, hey, I figured out a Google script that you can add that chat will just draft your emails and then respond. Essentially, it'll read your inbox, draft your emails, and then you just either hit respond or not. And because it's reading your inbox, it 110% has all the context on everything. So for instance, when a client emails and says, hey, I'm just trying to remember what was blah, 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 it's pulling from the last conversation, it's drafting response, I'm approving it and hitting send, which is saving me the time it would take for me to go back and review that conversation. So that's actually what I was working on this morning and what I had our account managers on a Zoom call for, to make sure we all get that set up right away so we can be more efficient.
So I may need that. I'm sure you get a ton of email. I get like between my two companies, probably on average between 300 to 500 emails a day. And
Yep.
so, yeah, we may need to talk offline for sure. I need that hack. I need that. And I think that's, like you're leveraging this technology to make yourself more efficient and by extension, do some of the heavy lifting and the work for you. You still get that high touch because the AI tool understands your voice, your approach, how you do things. Like you said, it's got the context of the email, and all it has to do is say, "Hey, is this good enough?" Click send if you're ready, right?
That's right. And I think what people miss about AI is it's not that I'm trying to shortcut my way out of life. It's that I want to just get myself out of the minuscule tasks
Yeah,
so I can go be a deep focus creator and maybe write like a 3-page white paper on the future of brand strategy and actually think about what that is and use my creative skills to put content out that's great instead of just AI copy.
yeah.
So if you want to be a creator rather than a consumer, you have to short hack your life so you have more time to create and do deep focus work.
That is excellent advice, and I love that. Obviously, I had no idea we were going to head down this path. So,
We're
I
going.
mean, this is how we roll on this podcast, which is awesome. I'm learning stuff right off the bat. But to reset for my listeners and the audience that'll see this on YouTube, give us a little sense of who you are. You're a badass entrepreneur. You come from the television world where you
Mhm.
were an anchor and a reporter, and then you pivoted because you saw the opportunity to take your core talents. Hopefully, I'm not overstepping here, but take those core talents and actually turn it into how you could tell a more effective strategy for the clients you serve. You built this amazing agency, you had it acquired. Now you're doing all this cool other stuff. So, just give our audience a sense of how we get to know you as the badass entrepreneur you are today.
Well, thank you. It's always awkward to hear yourself talked about like that because you're like, because an hour before this call, I'm like, I've got this proposal open. How do I want to close it? Like the imposter syndrome creeps in with
Sure,
everybody.
does
Um,
for everybody. You're right.
Yeah, and I think what I've learned from the people that I look up to in business, and even the person who acquired me, because it's a female founder who acquired my firm, is
Yeah.
just keep moving. 3 words that I keep in my head.
Yep.
Just keep moving, take action now. So, what I would say I've learned in the last decade is that you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to have everything figured out. You don't even need all the right information unless it's a big decision that impacts every element of your life, like getting
Yep.
married, right? Um, but you really do have to move quickly and you have to make decisions and you have to test and fail. So I come from a background of musical theater. And I essentially, from the time I was 8 to 21, was doing musical theater, improv, acting. And in improv, there's a rule, which is always say yes and go with it. And you kind
Yes,
of,
and right for the most
yes,
part. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
and, right? No no's here because you can't lose the joke. You can't lose the momentum.
Yep.
So all that to say, I got a full ride from musical theater to Nebraska Wesleyan University. 2 years in, I changed my major to political communications. And I went and worked in DC for a year at C-SPAN in a local news station. And I decided I wanted to be a very serious journalist. So I came back and I worked in Nebraska, anchoring and reporting all over the state at all of the different stations for about 4 years. And that was a really great experience in just say yes.
Yep.
Because when something happens and your story gets dropped from the A block because another guy got murdered and you're going to go cover that instead, you don't have time to throw a fit about it. You just
Yeah.
have to do it and figure
Gotta
it
do
out.
the work. Yeah.
Got to do the work. So that really built my entrepreneurial, I think resilience would be the
That's
word.
awesome. Yep.
And then I went from there into the marketing world, like you said. And I only interviewed with one firm. I went and worked with a guy who called me and was like, I hear you're tired of waking up at 3 a.m. and I need a head of sales. And I just started this marketing agency and we do people's social media. And this was like 10 years ago. It was still fairly new. The idea that you would hire someone to do your social media. He's like, we do people's social media and I think you should come on over. And I'm like, okay,
Wow.
truly, I just said yes. Did not apply to other jobs, did not look at other places. I just, my energy was like, you know what, this sounds like a great opportunity. Best thing I ever did. We built that business into a few $1,000,000 a year in revenue, and he actually sold that company. And I
Wow.
was on the leadership team with the chief marketing officer and him, and we were leading that company. He sold it to Firespring. I watched how he did it. I watched what he did, and I went, huh, I think I want to start my own. And the reason I went there is because I felt like so many people were spending money on digital advertisements, but they didn't actually have a brand. They
Right.
didn't have an audience understanding. They didn't have a brand strategy. They didn't have messaging or positioning. They were literally blowing hundreds of thousands of dollars on digital ads, not getting a return, and asking why their shitty website was not getting them the customers they wanted.
After they spent a ton of money on the website on top of everything, right?
Yeah, and really it was just we didn't do brand strategy. We were a digital marketing firm. Brand strategy was like this emerging new idea that you
Yeah.
actually have to position yourself to people. So I thought about that and started Oh Hello as a brand innovation lab and really a place that focused on brand strategy first, brand positioning first. Let's get that dialed in before we do anything else. And fast forward 8 years later, I bought my partners out a year in. I continued going on. I've had pretty much every single thing you can have happen on the entrepreneurial journey. I've been through it all, right? 2 years ago, I met Alex, who's the CEO of the Big Smoke. She was an Australian firm and she wanted to make her way into the US. And I was at the point where I was ready to start thinking about having a family
Yep.
and really settling down into what does it look like to get to an exit potentially and still have a lot of fun doing what I'm doing, but maybe not some of the day-to-day stresses. So after a year of due diligence, we figured out a way to make it work. And listen, I don't think a lot of entrepreneurs talk about this. Your first exit oftentimes is just like an extra cash. It's not like I'm making millions of dollars. The goal was get some retirement money, right? Get debt free, be able to move into this next phase of my life with at least a small understanding of what it takes to get to an exit. Work with another company and learn again because I'm now back into the learning phase, right? Of learning from other people, collaborating with other people, not just being on your own island as an entrepreneur, and then see where the journey takes me. And who knows, in a couple years I'll probably start building again. And Alex has been a wonderful mentor to me, so that's kind of how I've gotten to where I am. And now I'm the head of growth, and I still wear the founder role as a badge of honor and
Yep.
doing sales, but also looking at how do we take our team and continue to invest in them with things like AI automation and better processes and streamline all around. So
My hat's off to you. First and foremost, for a wonderful description of your journey, and congratulations on the success you've had in the acquisition. As an entrepreneur myself, since I was 22, I know how challenging and difficult that can be. So, you already checked one of the major boxes that entrepreneurs aspire to, right? With the acquisition, how has it been making that shift now back from being the primary decision maker to now more of a now I got to follow another leader kind of role? And I love how you categorize that. It's like, hey, I'm back into learning mode, which I love. Most entrepreneurs really struggle with that. In fact, when my firm was acquired in 2004, I was really kind of looking forward to sort of having that same kind of attitude. Let me, come in, stay in a leadership role, but let me continue to learn to see how this organization that was buying my company would grow. And then what I found pretty quickly was everything they told me in the pre-sale about, oh, we don't want to change a thing. We love your approach. Customer service is paramount to us. Like, it just was complete BS, right? And so I didn't last there very long. Fortunately, I got paid very well to go away, but we had different dynamics in terms of how, or visions in terms of how we grew the market. How was it for you, or how is it for you now to be in that, taking another kind of, maybe a backseat role to what you were accustomed to when you were leading it on your own?
look, it's definitely hard. I mean, there was a project just last night where Alex was like, I don't want to do this project yet. And I'm like, no, we need to.
We
And she's
got to
like,
do
yeah, we
it.
got to do it. And she's like, but it's not really a priority. And I'm like, but if it is a priority.
It
And
is for
so,
me.
yeah, I think Alex and I are both, I mean, she always says like she sees so much of me in her, and
That's good.
which is a compliment. And we're very much like, just say how you feel, get it out, resolve it, and move past it. And I think that that's been a huge help in the transition because I'm not working with anyone who's playing political games with me or talking behind my back or, and with women especially, like that's a really, that can be something that women experience. So
Huge challenge for
yeah,
women.
there's no like drama. It's just, look, we're going to figure out a way to do this. And you may not always love my decisions. I mean, Alex has told me that, but here's why I think they're the right ones. And I'm always willing to listen to your advice and insights on what could be a better one. So that process has been hard. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no doubt about it. I do think that I'm lucky though that Alex is also leaning on me to know the US market really well.
Yeah.
And I've been able to kind of show her a few things about what we could potentially be doing here to build a bigger footprint. So, yeah, I would say there's definitely obstacles. I think it's all about how you treat it. I think if you're somebody in an acquisition where you're staying on and you don't have a relationship with leadership where you can truly be honest, you're probably going to struggle.
Yeah. I think that's very, very true. I also tell a lot of founders I work with now that when they're going through the acquisition, spend your time doing due diligence on the people that are acquiring. I think what I heard, even though you didn't quite say it, Alex has a very similar management style to what you had when you were running it, right? Which helped you guys probably fall in sync a lot more and a lot quicker than it would. A lot of times I think that I always tell people that, there's the courting, then there's the dating, and then there's the marriage. And the marriage is when things really, really change, especially when you're in a business partnership. And you really need to do your due diligence on people that are acquiring or, potentially will acquire because your role beyond that, no matter what they say, will change, right? In the eyes of other people, day-to-day responsibility, or just the fact that somebody else is writing, the checks now, right? And having a good understanding of how those people have done other deals or how they look at management philosophy and strategy. And I felt like even for mine, I felt like I had a pretty good understanding. I also was pretty cautious about the individual I was kind of selling my company to, but I knew day two it was not going to work. And when I did this, I walked in like literally the second day after we closed the deal, and I'm like, hey, like I've not even called anybody a boss since I was like 20, right? So hey, boss, like first day of on the job, so to speak, with you, we got a deal. I closed it. He's like, oh, that's awesome. How does that work? I'm like, oh, and I joked it was like only 7 years in the making, and he's like, what? And I'm like, well, yeah, I've been calling on these guys for a long time. Took a long time. I actually helped them find some other solutions along the way, but they finally came back and agreed to move forward. Just happened to be on the day after we closed, right? And I thought that was like a badge of honor, right? I mean, I'm sticking to it and, I'm, cultivating a relationship. And the guy looks at me and he's like, that will never work here. That I don't, in fact, I don't even want this client because if it took them 7 years to decide to make a decision, then they are going to be a pain in the ass. We'll never upgrade them. We'll never get additional revenue from them. And I'm like, whoa, how short-sighted is that view? But I knew pretty quickly, like, we're going to be on different pages, right? And it was
Yeah, I
unique.
think it's the character of the person. Like that would not be a red flag to me. I have deals I've been working on for 5 to 10 years. I have people that I just call every 6 to 7 months to see, hey, how's your marketing going? That
Yeah,
I want a client. That's just good sales.
yeah, I agree.
And the way that you know they're going to be an asshole is by the way they email, by the way they talk to you, by the way that they communicate with you. And at that point, yeah, that's probably difficult. But 7 year sales cycles, I mean, that's nothing. I've got people on a 10 year sales cycle at this
Yeah.
point.
See, you and I would be like, we're very simpatico in that regard. I kind of knew it. I had one of those, if you were a fan of The Office moments when like I tell him and he tells me this, and I literally look over and he's got like almost in his office, because his office was in the same town, but just different location. And I look over on his credenza and he's got like this like half size Mickey Mouse. And I'm looking at it and it was kind of like this look. I just like looked at Mickey and Mickey looked at me and it was like, yeah, you're fucked, man.
Yep, correct. 110%. Mickey's
Yep.
like, see ya.
Yeah. Welcome to the new world that you're in. It's not Disneyland anymore. So anyway, so yeah, I think I love your advice there about, sort of how you went about that approach and then ultimately kind of how you have I love the attitude about I'm just back in learning mode, right? I'm gonna see where this person can take me. I like the fact that you sort of recognize that they're sort of a good coach and mentor for you and what potentially comes next.
She hired a coach for me in the pre-acquisition process too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I'm sure that coach was reporting everything I said to her, which I understand. Like, you're firing me, but the coach put together a lot of things, a development plan for me, an understanding of my weaknesses. Personality tested me. It brought me a lot of self awareness. That's allowed me to be a better leader. And so I think that even when you invest in your leadership like that, that's a great sign.
Yeah. Well, how I first discovered you, obviously, we have a friend in common, Maggie Thorne, being there in Omaha, or you're in Lincoln, right? You're in Lincoln, Nebraska?
I'm in Omaha, and Maggie
Omaha.
and I mean, we've just continued to become better friends. I actually asked her if she'd read a Bible verse at my wedding because she's just an amazing person
She
in
is.
my life, and also she exemplifies everything I want for my family. Like, I want
Yeah.
to be fit, spiritual, in touch with reality, empathetic, and all the things. So I actually asked her, I'm like, Maggie, I would love for you to read a Bible verse in my wedding. I see
Oh,
you as just this inspirational leader of our community, and she's become a great friend.
that's
So,
awesome. Well, yeah, for those of you that know the name but don't know how to place that, Maggie was American Ninja Warrior. She ran construction for the University of Nebraska. She's been very involved in the tech community in Nebraska in general. And she and I have just become really good friends. And she's everything like you just said. She is like a perfect example of the kind of human you really want to aspire to be. But she says something similar about you. So just so you know, I mean,
well,
I think the
that's really
feeling's
kind.
mutual.
You're gonna make me blush.
Yeah. But the thing that I love about what you do, when she was talking about your presentation, and I think it was an event that you were speaking at earlier this year, she was really, really so impressed with your approach to how you educate entrepreneurs, business leaders on what that takes to build your brand. There's no days off when you're building your brand. There is a commitment and a dedication to what you are doing, and especially in today's world where we are such attention deficit challenged people, grabbing someone's attention and getting that brand to stick out and really mean something for someone is really hard. There's a trick to that. It's, there's strategy and a sustained effort that's required. How have you seen in the time that you've had since you started the agency to where you are now, how that has that become a bigger and bigger challenge, or are you being able to utilize new ideas and strategies to stay top of mind for the clients you serve?
Well, when you say top of mind for the clients we serve, I'm assuming you mean just continuing to be their first choice, right?
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Um, I will tell you that what it comes down to in this business is the relationships you build and the service you deliver, right?
Amen. Yeah.
And if you can't build a great relationship, if you can't anticipate a client's needs before they need it, if you can't show them you're thinking ahead of them, then you're not going to have clients for long. And so
Yeah.
that is the number one priority, is client services at our firm. When it comes to helping them stay ahead of the curve, yeah, we're always talking through new strategies. We're learning things every quarter and then trying to pass it along to them on the importance. But one thing I will say is that most brands who come through our doors, we build them a beautiful website, a brand strategy, we consult them. They really struggle to build a brand because they don't put 110% into the brand piece of it, right? They might still convert leads into customers through some of our efforts. They might still see sales increase from what we've done. But building a brand is probably one of the hardest things you can ever do. And the reason why is because you have to commit to content, you have to commit to value and entertainment for your audience without getting anything in return. And a
Yeah.
lot of people don't want to do that process.
Yeah.
So we try to educate people. I just had a call with a client last night, a potential client who she's a relationship therapist and a sex therapist, totally taboo. And, she wants to build a content machine where she monetizes her content on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. And so I looked at her content and I was like, listen, you can absolutely do this. It's just going to take a year of consistently putting out absolutely incredible content. And it doesn't mean like highly produced. It means you're Googling every day what your audience is asking, and you're doing quick videos, and then you're analyzing what worked, what didn't, what hashtags operated well, and then doing it again the next day. The rent is due every day when you build a brand.
I love that.
You are not willing to pay the rent, you're not going to build a brand. And so that's why Black Rifle Coffee is valued at $3.7 billion. You look at something like that, right? For better or for worse, if you love or hate that brand, it evokes a feeling. It's a conservative coffee brand. They are not a coffee brand. They are a content brand. They are a content machine. And they have created tremendous value for their customers through their content and through their ideals and through creating a really strong brand by being consistent in their efforts. So to get to a $3 to $4 billion valuation, you either have to have a patented product that is so incredible, everybody's using it, right? Like, ChatGPT might be one of those things that's like, yeah, that is right. That's marketing itself.
Yeah.
Or you have to build an incredible brand in a crowded attention market and do it so well every single day, no matter how you feel. And that's hard to do.
So the type of service that you guys do through your agency, is it strategy or is it also the execution piece? Because I think one of the biggest problems, and we get pitched. I have a software company. We get pitched all the time. People coming in to talk to us about our brand, and you're absolutely right. I had the pucker factor a little bit when you said, the rent is due every day. It's like, shit, I'm way behind, right? So, but it's a reality, right? And it does become overwhelming. But you find that a lot of times people are like, hey, we're really good at telling you what you need to do. But if it was so easy to be able to execute on that plan, I think the vast majority of companies would try to figure it out. They'd read the book, they'd, go to the webinars, they'd take, the great ideas and then institute it. The reality is what you bring to the table, I think, from a brand perspective is like, we can tell you how to do it, but you really need the people that can actually execute it and can look at those hashtags every day, can look at those trends, keep
Yep.
those things bubbling up to the people who can develop the content and then leverage that content in a way that actually gets the attention.
Yeah. So here's our services and our approach, right? So we have a brand development side that 85% of our clients come in through, right? Brand, which starts with brand strategy, our say hello framework, which is 4 phases: discovery, understanding your audience and your competitors, voice and tone, building your brand personality, messaging, what are the stories we tell, and implementation. How do we tell those stories and what's the strategy for getting them out? So brand strategy follows that say hello framework. We have brand strategy and brand positioning, visual identity. We can build the visual identity as part of that framework, and web design and development on our brand development side. Brand strategy, visual identity, web design, brand development. Then, when they're ready, we say, all right, let's move you over to brand management. And there's a couple things that we're going to help you with, and there's a couple things that you're going to do. I'm a really straight shooter when it comes to helping mid level businesses understand what they should pay an agency to do and what they need to freelance and what they need to hire somebody in the Philippines to do, right? We are not going to sit here and analyze, every single TikTok video and
Yep.
what did well and what didn't do well, unless you want to pay us $20,000 a month. And most
Then we'll be
companies,
happy to do it.
right? We're
Yeah.
happy to do it, right?
Yeah.
Because that means we've got to really make sure that we're on point with that. So the services that we do on a brand management side is PR, media visibility, getting media placements that are brand worthy and credible, and helping you identify how to do that. And then us actually executing. We've got a head of media in New York and a head of media in Australia.
Ooh.
We position thought leaders and people, because media doesn't want to tell stories about a company. They want to tell stories about a person.
Yeah.
So that's how we help with that. Social media strategy and some social media management, and really filling in content gaps and working with your team to understand who's on the ground there that can run the stories, that can get more content. And then we'll help chop it up. We'll help edit and manage it. But we're working in tandem with your team, right, as an external resource. Paid ads, obviously paid ads, that's not going away anytime soon. We have a paid ads team, an SEO team. And then the last piece is email marketing and funnels. So creating your customer funnels. So these are some things that we do really well, right? Outside of that, there are tons of different things you can do in marketing and branding. But typically what we'll do is help the client understand, if we're not the expert, here's how you bring in the expert. And we also look at their budget.
Yep.
And the truth is a startup that spends $30,000 with us on branding probably can't afford to go on a 5K a month retainer for some of these
Right.
services. So we can help consult them and help them figure it out. But at the end of the day, what we see with founders who create a really great brand is their commitment to content, their commitment to putting content out and not faltering on that, to continue building the brand that we've built them in the beginning.
I love that. So I just read an article not too long ago. If I can find it, I'll send it to you. But it was an argument between too little content and too much content.
Oh,
What do
there's,
you
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's a whole lot of different takes on this, but what I heard you say is that you got to be getting up and grinding every day to do something, right? To get that
Something.
name in front of your prospective audience or to reinforce it with your existing audience.
Yep.
Um, how much is too much and how little is too little?
Yeah. So too little would be once every 2 weeks. That's too little.
Okay.
You're not remaining top of mind. Too much would be, in my opinion, 4 times a day. Gary Vee can do that. Gary Vee is not most of us. Okay. Alex Hormozy can do that. Alex Hormozy is not most of us.
Yeah.
Once you've built up trust with the algorithms, they're not pushing your content down because it's really good. But they put out content 4 times a day and it's freaking amazing content. It's not content that is getting pushed down in the algorithm. So most people make the mistake of going too hard, putting out really bad content 4 times a day, and the algorithms just bury them. They get depressed and they
Yeah.
stop. So for most of us, for most brands, just start with high quality content 3 to 4 times a week. Make it high quality, make it valuable. Understand how you're bringing value to your audience. I just had a hair salon who's a client, and she was like, I don't understand how these TikToks and Instagram videos that go viral get butts in my seats. And I said, they get butts in your seats because the goal of social media is the word of mouth referral. They share that video, they send it to somebody who didn't know that your hair salon was there, finds out that it's there. That's how they get butts in your seats. So you've got to create content that is either entertaining or serves tremendous value to your audience. If you're not doing one of those two things, no one cares. No one cares about
Yeah.
your content and no one cares about your brand. So my point is find the middle ground of 3 to 4 posts a week on 1 to 2 platforms to start. You can, some weeks I amp it up, some weeks I amp it down. You know, I'm in a content direction my own where I've only been doing 2 to 3 posts a week on my stories and on my LinkedIn. I've been feeling really burnt out on my content. I'm trying to figure out what direction I want to go. So I'm taking a little bit of time to kind of just water it down. But then there will be a time when I'm putting out tons of content. So, and by tons of content, I mean 5 or 6 times a week and really staying top of mind. So I think that it also comes down to you as a person and your business understanding what feels right for the business and the brand. And I always say less is more if it's high quality.
Yeah. I love that. What's your take on, you mentioned like, you'll do stories or reels. Um, are you a supporter when we're talking about video formats, short form, long form? What's your take, or does it depend on, I'm sure I'm answering my own question really, but probably depends on who you are or what your company is. But do you have a preference as to what seems to be, at least as we're looking at 2025, the stronger play for someone that's considering content?
I think short form content is really, really important, you know? And I think so, the short form content is essentially videos that are underneath, let's say, a minute to a minute 30. So
Okay.
underneath 30 seconds. And why that's the case and why that's so important is because essentially what people want is value in quick golden nuggets and quick golden takeaways. So if you're inundating them with information in a 5 minute video, our brains just don't work that way. We're in an
Yeah.
attention deficit. So short form content is also easy for you to do by talking about one thing. So I did a video that did so well for us the other day, and it was like, how do you figure out your ideal customer profile in less than 90 seconds? Right? Somebody wants to know that. Somebody wants to
It's
understand
a
that.
problem and it's a catchy title. You're gonna get eyes on that for sure.
Correct. Yes, absolutely. So that's what I
That's
would.
awesome.
Yep.
I love that. What so I caught something you said earlier about, and I'm guessing is probably the ideal client, a medium or middle sized client, right? That has the budget to bring in a resource like your agency. I love the fact that you sort of showed that and shared that, because at the end of the day, it's also a pretty good distinction as to, your target market, where you want to focus your time, energy, and effort. You're not after necessarily the solopreneur that's doing whatever they're doing as a side hustle because they won't have the budget or probably the fortitude or commitment to do what you need them to do in order to get the traction to show the ROI on the investment. But did you make that concentrated effort when you started the agency, or is that something evolved, or am I catching it or reading that completely wrong?
You're reading it right. When we started the company, we took anybody who had money, anybody who could pay us.
I
Thank
was
you.
going to say, yeah. Okay.
We did 130,000 in our first year. Anyone who could pay me, I was
Yeah.
taking. When
If you
as
got a
agencies,
pulse, I'm taking you.
you get a pulse? Cool, I'm taking you. So as agencies evolved, we found a couple of different niches. And look, we're not completely niche in one vertical because first off, creatively, that fatigues a team that's trying to build a great brand. And second off, Agencies are volatile. I mean, they
Yeah.
are. And
Yeah.
yes, you can specialize in one thing, but if that market drops out because of the economy, which is what we saw in COVID, you can kind of feel like, oh gosh, what do I do? Right.
Yeah.
So we have three kind of audiences that I would say. One is the blue collar business that's a 20 to 35 million and up company that is ready to build a brand and ready to go outside of their comfort zone with what they've done before. They don't have an updated website. They don't have an updated brand. They have no messaging. Their salespeople don't have processes. We're going to take them and we're just going to fix them all right up. And blue collar brands are a blast. That's our first really strong ICP. The second one is, some of these direct to consumer brands that are trying to launch with 1 to 5 SKUs want a really focused brand strategy, a really focused brand story and brand narrative. They're not launching with thousands of SKUs. They're launching with a couple of really unique products that solve a very specific problem. We can help them build out their brand strategy, build out their e-commerce store. Those brands 5 years ago, it was the heyday of them. The white sneakers and parachute with just one set of linen, the perfect linen, right? And of course, they expand, but those projects are really fun for us. And we've done a lot of them, whether it's a hooded towel or a type of apron. And you can really get into a very targeted ICP, and it's very strong creatively. And the third one is, SaaS companies, because they're typically selling in a market that they're talking about a lot of features, but they're not talking about emotional benefits, and they're not taking their consumer into, this is what life looks like with my product. They're just talking a lot about their product and themselves. So being able to help them story brand framework and create a really, really great narrative around what life is like with their product is really fun for us. So those are a couple verticals that we really rock at and that we really enjoy doing work in. And then of
So
course,
that,
branding, because we do a lot
yeah.
with the thought leader.
Now, the last vertical you talked about, the example that would come to mind would be what you see on the evening news, right? With a lot of the pharmaceuticals. Like, I had this condition, took this drug, now my life is better, kind of, right? That's kind
Yep,
of that third vertical that you were targeting, because at the end of the day, you can say, hey, this is what it's intended to do, but unless you actually have a real life person that's benefited from whatever the product or service might be, it's kind of empty advertising in a big, big way, right? But
yep,
having a real life example, or here's where I was, here's where I am, thanks to XYZ product or XYZ service is pretty significant. And it's funny that I guess that conjures up something for me, because I feel like over the last 10 years, you've seen a difference in specifically like pharmaceutical marketing and brand building around these drugs, where before it was just, hey, let me just tell you the facts. I only want the facts, and here's what it fixes, and here's why you need to take it. And then you see this shift now from brand and output or benefit of whatever the product or service might be, to now more story mode, because it's more relatable and you put yourself in the same shoes as the person you're watching.
absolutely. 110%.
I love that. So because we started this off talking about AI and the tools and the capabilities, and I love the fact that you are doing what you can to take things off your plate so that you can do the deep work. You use that word. I love that very much. Shout out to Cal Newport, I think, probably for that,
I read the
term
book.
becoming, yeah, fantastic. But how have you always been that way? Or is this sort of by, need or necessity for survival to had to adapt your approach to how you go about being the leader you are?
Such a great question. I think right now we are in an epidemic of everyone thinking they have access to everybody at all the time. And I'm trying to not be rude, but I am done with that. And
Yep.
so I am in a era where I want to really focus my energies on creating, because when I feel most fulfilled at work is when I create. It's when I create. It's when I create content. It's when I create for our clients. It's when I create great experiences on the sales side. It's not in responding. I'm not a robot, right? I want to use a
On
robot.
somebody's time frame, like, hey, I just texted you because I just sent you an email 3 minutes ago and you didn't respond yet, right?
No, thanks. Yeah.
That's the world
So
we're in.
yeah. So I'm practicing more boundaries and setting boundaries. And I want to be a creator in the next decade of my career. I don't think that let me explain. I want to be an innovator. To be an innovator, you have to be a creator. You have to essentially be able to put out things of of value to other people.
Sure.
During the pandemic, I wrote a 100-page article or 100-page ebook that I made $30,000 off of. That was one of my best favorite times in the world, which I know is controversial, not because of, people dying, but because I got to be at home and I got to focus. I made 30 grand off of something that took me 7 hours. The reason that was possible is
That's a pretty
because
good ROI.
right? People weren't coming at me, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, the next piece of my life phase is more of that. And I'm still in the process of creating this for myself, but I'm just starting to implement more tactics, phone interruption mode. Even the thought of, okay, I really want to respond to this email right now, but I'm doing something else. Finish this task.
Yep.
The discipline to finish a task before you move on to the next one. So I think that's what we're going to start seeing in the next 3 years is there's going to be more consultants and trainers on coming into companies on how to get people to focus. Rather than putting us all on some drugs and saying we have ADHD, it's going to be people coming in and saying, let me show you the processes and systems to implement into your life so that you can actually achieve an output with all this technology.
I love that. I love that so much. Well, you mentioned, the target, right? Being creative, being a creator. Is that in the brand space or is it something else?
Yeah, so this is Alex will love this response. And I don't say that sarcastically. I mean, she truly will. So I am a brand strategist. I mean, I've been leading this agency and doing brand strategy work with clients for 8 years. I think that I'm most effective as a head of growth, which I am as a salesperson, when I am also reading, creating, and working with brands. So I typically pick 1 to 2 brands per quarter that are clients that I still kind of stay on with and almost help strategically. And the
Yeah.
reason that I do that is because I still want to be sharp on the brand strategy side. And I want to take that into my sales experience. Because when I have a sales call, I'm not sitting here being like, let me sell you a website. I'm sitting here asking questions about your brand. I'm a very curious person. When I go through my sales process and I take somebody's goals of revenue and where they want to go top line and how they want to expand and where their brand is currently at, I'm researching their competitors. I'm looking at what their current messaging says. I'm thinking about angles. I'm thinking about their thought leaders and how they fit into the brand and if they've got to have a spokesperson and who's going to, and that's the fun part. And it's what differentiates me in sales because people come to me on a sales call expecting me to be a typical marketing agency selling them a website for $5,000. And instead, I walk them through a 360 brand audit of where their brand is. And I tell them, this is where it can go. And this is the vision and the future of your industry. That's who I want to be,
Yeah.
not a salesperson. So to do that, you have to still occasionally work with clients, which I do. You have to still be reading research and you still about human psychology and essentially the different industries and where they're going. And then you also have to be creating content to be able to do that effectively. So that's my goal for the next couple of years of my career.
Well, and I think like when I've got a buddy that's in Austin that's got a brand agency and he's struggled in a big, big way, but because no offense to him, he's not the CEO that you are, right? He's like, I got my role and that's all I'm going to do. And then I hand it off and it gets piecemealed and he's got a process and he has a lovely team. They're great people, but there's discombobulation and disconnection because the right hand doesn't always know what the left hand is doing. What I love about you is not only are you willing to roll up your sleeves and do the work, but you're also like putting yourself in direct environments to gain that experience because that experience you learned today could benefit your client tomorrow, right?
Correct.
Or it could inspire the next great idea you bring back to that same environment, in 2 weeks. I think
100%.
that I think that's phenomenal. So when you're talking about that, even though you said, Alex would love that, is that something you do on your own? Is that something down the road that you build a different kind of agency or approach? Or what do you think that
No,
looks
I mean,
like in 5?
Alex has given me the flexibility to still work on a quarterly basis with 1 or 2 clients. I mean, I'm not
Perfect.
completely out of the client work, but we keep me out of the bits and bobs of writing content and
Yeah.
UI UXing their website and things that maybe I would have done, when I was running the firm or startupping the firm. So it's more, how am I a strategic consultant coming in to meet with our clients and advise at key junctures of their process? Like, when they finally get the mocks of their website, and I've maybe seen them internally and given some strategic thought, and we're having a conversation about what the design elements are going to do for their brand, I can come into those calls and work with a client and offer my expertise, almost like an advisory role. And that keeps me sharp because I prep for those calls, I understand their brand, and I'm looking at industry analysis of what is happening in their space. And I love doing them. So that might be 2 or 3 hours a week of my time, which isn't a lot, but it's important to keep me connected to what our clients want and need and to account services, or I'm going out and telling people or shaping the things that we do in a way that doesn't make sense for the client.
Yeah. I love that. What I kind of almost envision that looking or breaking into is kind of like, you've heard that phrase entrepreneur in residence, where you're bringing somebody with outside expertise in to look at your business and almost reconstruct it to a degree from their entrepreneurial mindset to say, hey, what you've done is great, but where I can bring my experience and my wisdom and apply it here could take us, so many different places. You're almost kind of that way when you're talking about the brand of, development, right? You have the seat at the table. You're as you own the output, you own the ROI for the client, but you're right next to them, shoulder to shoulder. And it's not like, hey, we're just doing this kind of on the fly, or, it's because it's our monthly check-in, but you're doing it because you have a true commitment and passion to helping them succeed, because the more they succeed, the more they rely and need you, right? So,
We
your seat at
consider
the table
ourselves like a
stays.
fractional
Yeah.
CMO. That's
Yeah.
a big part of our service, and we actually position us as such.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. That's fantastic. Where do you think all of the technology plays that we have today, right? All the tools and, various ways to get your name and your brand out there. Where do you see that changing, or where do you see it going in the next 5 years? Because I know it's obvious just even paying attention to you. Like our audience is going to be like so tuned in to you because you are freaking awesome. So intense, but I know you're looking 5, 10, 15 years down the
I
road. I can see your head. I can see the wheels turning in your head as we talk. So
Yeah, I think in 5 years, your agency will be responsible for helping you position and cultivate and decide direction. But I do think things like paid ads will be run by AI 5 years from now, and we will just be monitoring it, or you will be monitoring it. I think things like building a website 5 years from now, that will not be something that you need to hire an agency to do. So, what will you hire an agency to do? Campaigns, creative, direction, focus, understanding how to integrate technology together, workflows, automations. You'll be hiring a team to piece things together because you don't have the time to look at a tech stack and understand how to integrate it. But brand strategy will remain even more important in 5 years because people are losing the ability to connect human to human. It's happening with Gen Z as much as we love
yeah,
them. It's happening with millennials. People are on their phones, people aren't talking. So, how do you understand humans and where they're at? You need to hire agencies that are hard open, willing to do qualitative and quantitative research to understand human psychology to build a brand that converts. And that is where I believe the future will go. And I think that will be even more important than it is now.
I love that. And actually, if you think about it, forget technology. This almost takes you back to the Mad Men kind of advertising model where, all right, you have whatever it is, the block of soap, you're doing okay in your regional market, but you want to go national. And now you need someone that's got creative vision to really take you from where you are to where you want to go. But it's more of a hands-on, very contact oriented kind of sport at that point, which is, I think it's funny because, talk about going back to the future, right? That's where I think it, if it does fall in line with what you say, that's really where you're going to be back, right? It's very hands-on, very direct, but also more intentional and purposeful than we are today. You won't be able to spin your way out of the problem, and you won't be able to just AI the issue, right? You're going to need people like you sitting at my table going, okay, this is what we need to do next. And after that, here's what we're going to do beyond that. And here, 3 years from now, where we'll be because of these efforts that we're making today.
Absolutely agree with you. And you're going to
Uh,
need people who are integrators, who are strong executioners, because that is hard to find in the job market.
it
So that's why
is.
hiring an
Yeah.
agency is because you get that.
Absolutely. Well, Natalie, I could talk to you for hours. I mean, I'm just fascinated by your journey and the approach here, and I appreciate your time. I want to do a quick time check. Are you okay for a few more minutes?
Yeah, I do have a noon, so maybe actually not because it's 11:59.
Okay, yeah. Well, yeah, we got started a little bit late.
Yeah,
How
I
about we
apologize.
agree to do this? I am going to end it here.
Cool.
Normally, I like to do a little ripple oriented questions, but there's so much that I think we could continue to talk. Maybe we could schedule a sequel here in a little while and
Love
do
it.
it and go from there. But I just want to thank you so much for the time today. And if there's anything I can be doing to help support you or the agency, don't hesitate to reach out to me. But I really appreciate you being on the Ripple Effect podcast. So thank you.
Thanks, Steve. You've been a pleasure. And yeah, if you, anyone who's listening, follow me on Instagram at Natalie Micale. Send me a DM on LinkedIn. I love connecting with people about projects and all the things. And we would love to do a volume. I'd love to do volume 2 with you and go even deeper. So
Let's
thanks,
do it.
Steve.
Let's do it. I appreciate it. Good luck with your call. Thanks for the time today, and we'll be in touch soon.
Appreciate it.
All right,
Bye.
take care. Bye bye.